وقل رب زدني علما.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. So moving on, we're discussing the fa'il, and now the next rule is very, very important. Well, all the rules are important, but some are much more used. So it's something that we need to know, especially is very, very important. What is this? We're discussing the fa'il, but the particular rule we're discussing today is إلحاق علامة التأنيث. Where does the fa'il have a علامة التأنيث? Where does the amil of the fa'il? Where does the amil of the fa'il have a علامة التأنيث? So yesterday we discussed about where it doesn't have علامة التثنية or jama except in a few shadda masail, a few mathawit al-shadh. So we're discussing the fa'il, number 11. Now this is the text here. So we're saying here, we're discussing fa'il, we're discussing sentences and fa'il. We discuss the i'rab is marfu, and we also discussed that the fa'il always has to come second. If it comes first, it becomes the mubtada. And then we said you shouldn't have alamat ta'nith or jama'. And if you have this, then you can either say alama, not the fa'il, or you can make it the badal. Now this is what we're discussing here. Well, this will come tomorrow. We're discussing this part here, where we add a ta'nith sign to the amil, i.e. the verb. Right, so وَتَلْحَقُهُ عَلَامَةُ تَأْنِيثٍ, and who here refers to the amil. So the amil of the verb can have an alamatu ta'nith. Yes, what can happen? The amil can have an alama of ta'nith attached to it. When? With scenarios. We're discussing that here bit by bit, inshallah. So the first thing we're going to say is, let's look at the fa'il. So we're looking at the fa'il. Can the fa'il have a ta'nith or not? Will it be fa'ala or fa'alat? Simply or not? So we look, is the fa'il an ismul dhahir, meaning opposite of dhamir? If it's an ismul dhahir, an ismul dhamir is slightly different. But for now, let's look at dhahir. Meaning, what? There's a fa'il, and the fa'il comes after it as an ismul dhahir. It doesn't refer back to it as a dhamir. Does everybody understand? For example, one would be, Ja'a Zaydun. So the fa'il is a dhahir. And one is Zaydun Ja'a. The fa'il is what in Ja'a? A dhamir, inside huwa mustatir. We're not looking at that one. We're looking at when it's actually apparent. So far, so good? Okay. So what we're going to look at, first of all, we're going to say here, we look and we see, is the fa'il singular or is the fa'il plural? What do we look at? If the fa'il is singular or if the fa'il is what? Plural. Okay? If the fa'il is singular, then if the fa'il is mu'annath haqiqi, not haqiqi, but mu'annath haqiqi, meaning what? It's a real female, biologically it's a female. Yes, not a grammatical female. For example, we have sa'atun is female, clock, watch, hour, that's not really female. Maghfiratun, that doesn't have gender, but it's just grammatical gender. We're not talking about those, we're talking about what? Haqiqi. It literally is female, it has a male and a female form. Then we have to look at another question. Does the fa'il come immediately after the amil or not? After the fa'il or not? If it does, that means that the fa'il's effect is very strong on the amil. Because after the amil, directly you have the mu'annas. So then what will happen? The mu'annas will govern the fa'il. So for example, we have here, I don't know, it's quite small, but I hope you can see it. Ja'at bintun. So bintun is actually bintun is a female, a girl. It's actually a literal female. And it comes right after the fa'il. Therefore, the mu'annas will affect this, and you will have to add ta'u ta'nith. You have to add ta'u ta'nith. Rule number 1, understood? Abdullah, Abdurrahman, Muhammad, Ahmad, Omar. Okay. Second example is, if the mu'annas is haqiqi, but there's a space in between. Because there's a space in between, like yawm, ja'a al-yawm, ja'at al-yawm bintun. A girl came today. Now because you have al-yawm, what comes between the fa'il and the fa'il? A space. Because of that, the effect of the mu'annas is not as strong on the verb. Therefore you have a choice. You can say ja'a al-yawma bintun or ja'at al-yawma bintun. You can say mudhakkar or mu'annath. So far so good? Yes? So a real mu'annas is very strong. So if it comes immediately after the fa'il, you have to make it mudhakkar. If it has a bit of space in between, you got a choice. It gives you a bit of breathing space. Okay? The second example is if the mu'annath is not a real mu'annath, it's a grammatical mu'annath. For example, nafsun, shamsun, and here we can say, for example, ummun, bintun, ukhtun. Yes? A mu'annath majazi is not really mu'annath. It's just mu'annath for grammatical purposes. It's not biologically mu'annath. So far, so good? What do you think? Is this a strong mu'annath or is it a weak mu'annath? This majazi mu'annath? It's weak, so therefore the fa'il can be what? You got a choice. So you can say what? Tala'a ash-shamsu or tala'at ash-shamsu. Even if there's no space because it's already weak. In here, why does it become weak? Because of the space in between. And in here, the word itself is weak. It's not a real mu'annath. So that's why you can tala'a ash-shams or tala'at ash-shams. Understood? Yes, so far so good? Next example, next category, if the verb is what? Jama'. What is it? It's a majmu', it's a plural. Then it's either going to be salim or mukassar. It's going to be what? Salim or mukassar. So if it's salim, the salim follows the same rules as the mufrad. So for example, if you're mudhakkar salim, so for example, muslimuna. So in muslimun, you have to say what? Mudhakkar muannas. Ja'a muslimun, ja'at muslimun. Mudhakkar. So when you ja'a, so similarly when you bring the plural, you also have to say what? Ja'al muslimuna. You can't say ja'at al muslimuna. If it's a muannath, then we have to see. If it was a muannas haqiqi, bana is a plural of what? Bana is a plural of bintun. What's the rule in bintun? It's a very strong mu'annath. So therefore, if it comes muttasil, you have to bring it what? Mu'annath. So one girl came, many girls came. So it's a ja'at banatun. You can't change it. Okay? But if you have, for example, ja'at al-ana. This should have been here. This is better here. Let's change it here. Let's change it. Saqat al-ana banatun. A few girls fell. They fell off the chair or something. So now because there's a space, what can you do? Saqata or saqatat. Understood? Are you following? So look here. So if it's mu'annas salim, if it's banatun is what? What's the plural of banat? Bintun. So because bintun is a real mu'annas or a mu'annas majazi? Mu'annas haqiqi. So in mu'annas haqiqi, what's the rule? It's a very strong mu'annas. Therefore, if it comes directly, you have to make it mu'annas. Ja'at. If there's a fasila, you can say ja'a or ja'at. You got a choice. When you have ja'a al-yawm, you can say either ja'a al-an banat, or you can say what? What can you say? Ja'at. Okay? So if it's mu'annath, if it's mu'annas haqiqi, in the first two examples, what? Mu'annas haqiqi, yes? And the last one is mu'annas what? Tamaratun is what? Mu'annas majazi. Yes? So in mu'annas haqiqi, what's the rule? If it comes directly, there's no space, what do you have to do? Mu'annas, yes? Remember here? And if there's a space, if there's after the fail, there's space, what do you have? A choice. You can say ja'al an banatun, because an or al-yawm is space. So you can say mudhakkar or you can say mu'annath. Can you see that? Are you following? And in tamaratun, because tamara is mu'annas salim, but because it's not mu'annas haqiqi, it's mu'annas majazi, you can say saqatat tamaratun or you can say saqata tamaratun. You can say both ways. Do you understand? So the root of the salim is what? Same as mufrad. Understood? And if it's jama' mukassar, if it's jama' mukassar, what happens? You got a choice. Because rijal is not a problem. But when it's rijal, we can say rijal means here jama'a. Kind of like jama'a. Or it means fariqun. So whether you want to take, so they've allowed it. So when you got a jama' mukassar, you got a choice. Let's go all the way back and start again. Yes? See if you can figure out. Yes? Okay. So if it's mufrad, what do you have to look at? Is it mu'annath haqiqi or mu'annas majazi? If it's mu'annas haqiqi, is the mu'annas effect strong or weak? So therefore the fi'l has to be what? Mu'annath. If there's a space in between, the mu'annas effect becomes what? A bit weak. So therefore we have a choice. We can say masculine or feminine. Ja'a al-yawma bintun or ja'at al-yawma bintun. If now it's majazi, is the strength of the mu'annas weak originally or not? It's weak. So therefore you have a choice of bringing mudhakkar or mu'annas. You can say tala ash-shamsu or tala'at ash-shamsu. If it's plural, then you have to see, is it a plural jama' salim or jama' what? Mukassar. If it's jama' salim, the same rule as a mufrad will apply. So if for example it's a mudhakkar, then you have to say ja'a al-muslimun. And if it's jama' salim, you have to look, is it haqiqi or is it majazi? If it's haqiqi, then you have to bring it, if it comes like this, if it's not muttasil, if it's muttasil, you have to bring mu'annas. And if it's munfasil, you have a choice. Yes? So ja'a al-an banatun or ja'atil an banatun. Or saqatat tamaratun or saqata tamaratun. You got a choice. And if it's jama' mukassar, you got a choice as well. Does that make sense? Yes? Yeah? Everybody understand that? Is that clear? Yes? If the fa'il is a dhamir, so then what does the dhamir refer back to? So let's have a look. Same table, but slightly different rules. If it's a mufrad, if the dhamir is referring back to a mu'annas haqiqi, what do you think it's going to be? Al-bintu ja'at. Can it munfasil? Here, even if you have Fatima, al-yawm, ja'a, it doesn't make a difference. It becomes the same now. When Zamir is referring back to it, you can't have Fatima, ja'a, because you can't have a fasl. Here's a fail. It doesn't matter. Once you have the Zamir is not here, this is not what will happen now. The file is here inside. It's not the Fatima after it. So when it comes a Zamir here inside, then it always has to match. So in mu'annas haqiqi, when the fa'il is a zahir, you have a choice. When it's munfasil. When it's a zamir, and there's no such thing as muttasil and munfasil, it becomes one ruling. It always has to become what? Mu'annath. Does that make sense? Everybody following? If it's majazi, even then you have to bring what? Mu'annas. You can't bring mudhakkar. So the choice that we had in here and here is now gone. When it's a mu'annath. Correct? When it's not a mu'annath, when it's ismul dhamir. Everybody following me? Yes? If it's jama' salim, mudhakkar, you have to bring jama' mudhakkar, al-muslimuna ja'u. If it's mu'annath haqiqi, the same thing will happen. If it's mu'annath haqiqi, for example, an-nisa'u. What will be an-nisa'u? For example, al-muslimat. Al-muslimatu dhahabna. You'll have to make it match. Okay? And if is what? Ghair aqil. You got a choice. Not between mudhakkar and mu'annas, but between single and plural. You can say at-tamaratu either saqatat or saqatna. Yes? In terms of number, you got to. There's a difference. I don't want to go through the difference right now. You do a bit more detail balagha. When it's jamal killa, jamal kathra, is a difference between saqata and saqatna. Okay? But we'll do it later on. But you can do both of them. Okay? And if it's jama' mukassar, then what happens now? You either say ar-rijalu ja'u or rijalu ja'at. And here you can bring the jama' or you can bring the zamir mustatir here, referring back to jama'atul rijal. Does that make sense? Let's try it again. Is it when we have a jama' mukassar, you kind of treat it as though it's like it means jama'ah. That's why it's mu'annas. Do you understand? Jama'ah means group. So like rijal means jama'atun. So that's why it's mu'annas. So they say, well, we think as the word rijal to mean jama'atun. And jama'atun is mu'annas. So therefore you can bring it as a mufrad mu'annath. That's how they look at it. This means group. The man is a group. So rijal means a group of men. So jama'atul rijal, a group of men. So is Jama'ah singular or plural? Singular, isn't it? The word Jama'atun. Is it singular or plural? Is singular, is it mudhakkar or muannas? Muannas. So therefore, you can bring the verb to be singular muannas to match this. Do you understand? So, yeah, but you look at the singular. Good question, but you look at the singular, not the plural. So let's go over it again. If it's mufrad, so let's put both together. Right? Let's forget this. Now here, if we have muttasil, we have, and this is zamir. You have to say al-bintu ja'at and Fatima ja'at. If this was what? It was the other way around. Ja'a al-yawm. Let's say al-yawm Fatima. What verb could we bring now here? Or, because now it's a dhamir, it's ism al-zahir, this is the fa'il. If the Fatima comes first and the fa'il is a hiya, then you have to bring mu'annas. Correct? If it's majazi, then if it's what? This is a mistake. Ash-shams wa tala'at. So tala'at ash-shams, tala'at ash-shams, or you have to be what? If it comes first, if you have this, tala'at ash-shams, you can have tala'at ash-shams, or you can also have what? Why tala'a? Because shams is what? Muannas haqiqi or muannas majazi? Majazi. And if the shams comes first as a mubtada, what do we have to have? Muannas. So far so good? Yes? If it's a jama', mudhakkar salim, so al-muslimuna ja'u, or if it was a jumla fa'liya, it will ja'al muslimuna. If it's muannas, then if it's muannas like this, let's say for example, if it's jumla fa'liya, ismiya, you say al-muslimatu, what would it be now? They went dhahabna. And if it he was dhahaba, you said dhahabna. You said dhahabna. And if it was dhahabatil muslimatu. And if you have a space in between, dhahabal anu, al-ana, the Muslim ladies just went. So dhahabal anu al-muslimatu. Or you could also say what? Dhahabat. So if the muslimat comes first and it's a dhamir, you have to bring it jama' muannas. Correct? If the muslimat comes after as a fa'il, you can bring alama al-ta'anith in here. Or if there's a fasila, you can remove the alama al-ta'anith, or you can keep alama al-ta'anith. You following? Is everybody with me? When there's a fasila between al-ana, comes between the fa'il and the fa'il. Yeah? And if you have jama' mukassar, then what can you do jama' mukassar? You can say, if you have it comes after, we can say what? Dhahabar qala, this is qala. Qala ar-rijal. What else can you say? Qalat ar-rijal. And when the rijal comes first, you either say ja'u or ar-rijalu ja'at. Yes? Understood? Is that clear to everybody? Are you sure it's a very important masala? Is it clear? Should we go over it one more time, or is it in your minds? Okay, let's go one more time. Okay. Let's start from here. So if you have ism al-zahir, what do we look at? What do you have to look at the first categorization? Is the word what? Is the word the ism al-zahir? Is the fa'il ism al-zahir, or is the fa'il al-dhamir? If the fa'il is al-zahir, then we have to look, is the word singular or is the word plural? If it's singular, we have to look, is it mudhakkar or mu'annath? If it's mudhakkar, then obviously the fa'il is mudhakkar, not alama ta'anith. Correct? If the fa'il is mu'annath, then you have to look, is the mu'annath haqiqi or mu'annas what? Majazi. If it's mu'annas haqiqi, because it's a very strong mu'annas, you have to bring the verb as what? Mu'annas. For example, ja'at bintun. Okay? However, if it's what a fasila, is munfasil, meaning the fa'il is separated from the fa'il. What do we do then? We have a choice. What can we bring? Ja'a or ja'a al-yawm or ja'at al-yawm banatun. Bintun, whatever. If it's mu'annas majazi, it's already weak, so what can we bring? Either. We can have here, tala ash-shams or tala'at ash-shams. Now, whilst we're here, if we go back, we say, if any of these was what? If it was a dhamir, what would happen? If it was a dhamir, this is what dhahir, isn't it? If any of these was a dhamir, you would have to what? No. You don't have a choice. You can't have mudhakkar. You have to have what? علامة التأنيث. You have to have علامة التأنيث. Meaning you have to do what? You would have to say what? You would have to say جاءت. Zamir is here and ta is علامة التأنيث. Yes? So this permissibility of having both goes away when it's a dhamir. Okay? If it's a jama', then it's either mukassar or salim. In salim, the mufrad and the mudhakkar and mu'annath have the same rules as a mufrad. So if it's mudhakkar salim, the rule of the plural will be the same as the rule of the singular. So the rule of muslimun is what? Ja'a muslimun. So it will also be what? Ja'a al-muslimuna. Understood? Yes? And if it's mu'annath, same rule apply. If it's mu'annath haqiqi or mu'annath majazi. If it's mu'annath haqiqi, is what? Muttasil or munfasil. If it's muttasil, then you have to have what? Mu'annath, ja'at banatun. If it's munfasil, you got a choice, ja'al an or ja'atil an banatun. Yes? You following? And if you have mu'annas majazi, then you got a choice, saqatat tamaratun or saqata tamaratun. Well, it's always mudhakkar anyways. Whether you say ja'a al-yawm al-muslimun, it still remains mudhakkar, isn't it? That fast doesn't make a difference. It won't make a difference. Yes? And jama' mukassar, what would you say? You've got a choice. We could say ja'a rijalun or ja'at rijalun. Correct? Yes? And if we make these into a dhamir, what will happen now? Al-muslimuna will become what? Al-muslimuna ja'u, no alam ta'anith. Yes? In banatun, in this you have to make what? Mu'annas. You have to say banatun, ya al-banatu ji'na. You have to make it ji'na. Yes? And in tamaratun, you can either say what? You can either make it mu'annas, you can say al-tamaratu saqatat, singular, or you can say what? Plural as what? Saqatna. And here you can say al-rijalu ja'u or al-rijalu, no, not ja'a, ja'at. Because you can only say al-rijal. When you say rijalu ja'u, you're thinking rijal, the normal word, normal plural, so it's plural, so ja'u. And if you say ja'at, it's because you think of rijal means basically jama'a. A jama'a came. So that's mu'annas singular, so you can say ja'at. Is that clear now? So inshallah, pardon me? Because it's not aqil. So the ghair aqil can be singular. And aqil you have to make it plural. Okay? Yes? So inshallah we finish off the text, and after the text we do some exercises inshallah. You okay? Yes? Okay, subhanallah wa bihamdi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. So now, yesterday we just summarized it in a table. Now we're going to discuss this in text form. What he said in text. So he says, وَتَلْحَقُهُ. وَتَلْحَقُهُ, meaning the علامة التأنيث can affect the amil, meaning the fa'il. In kana mu'annathan, if it is what mu'annas. Kaqamat, like the word qamat hindun wa tala'at shams. So in this example, he gave two examples, qamat hindun and tala'at shams. Why? He gave two examples to show us what? What's he showing us? What kind of mu'annas is hindun? Mu'annas? Mu'annas haqiqi. And tala'at shams is mu'annas? Mu'annas majazi, also known as mu'annas lafzi. Yes, mu'annas majazi. It's better to say mu'annas majazi. Okay? Right. So what he's explaining now, he's saying here, وَيَجُوزُ الْوَجْهَانِ فِي مَجَازِيِّ التَّأْنِيثِ الظَّاهِرِ. What does that mean? If you have a mu'annath, but a mu'annath is what? Majazi. Is it a dhamir or is it ismu dhahir? Ismu dhahir. So then you have a choice. But the thing is, what he does, he mentions the rule, but in the example he mentions what is better. What does he do? He mentions the rule, but in the examples he gives, he mentions that form that is better. So you can use both, but what form is better? Mudhakkar mu'annath? Mu'annath, that's why I got ja'adkum. So if you got a mu'annas majazi, even then it's still better to do what? Make it what? The fa'il, the amil mu'annath. Are you following? Does that make sense? Yes. You have a choice. So if you need to, if it was in poetry or you want to make an excuse for the teacher in exams, you can argue your point. Yes? Okay? وَفِي الْحَقِيقِيِّ الْمُنْفَصِلِ. You can also have two choices. For example, we have mu'annas haqiqi, but it's munfasil. What does munfasil mean? There is a fasila. So between the amil here, between the fa'il, what do we have? A fasila. So mu'annas haqiqi, imra'atun, is munfasil from the amil. So in here you also have two options. You can say hadara or hadarat. Which one is better? Hadarat, the mu'annas. That's why he brought the example of hadarat. Understood? Okay. Now this I didn't explain yesterday in the text because just remember, this is a side note because it's not that often. You don't get these verbs that often. But what he's saying here, وَالْمُتَّصِلِ فِي بَابِ نِعْمَ وَبِئْسَ. What does that mean? If you have a mu'annas haqiqi, but the verb is ni'ma or bi'sa, then you got a choice. You can say, the fa'il is this. This is the fa'il, isn't it? This is the makhsus. So if it comes straight away here, you got a choice. You can say what? Ni'matil mar'atu or ni'mal mar'u. Ni'matil mar'atu or ni'matil mar'atu. You got a choice. So if it's fi'lul madhi wa dham. So for example, if you say, bi'sa sa'atu hadhi. This is a very bad watch, for example. So you can say bi'sa sa'atu hadhi if you wanted to as well. Because why? Well, this is obvious because this is mu'annas, we call it, this is mu'annas majazi. But for example, if you have bi'sal bintu hadhihi. So even though you can make it mudhakkar if you want. But only when it's what? Fa'lu madhi wa dham. Not in normal af'al. In normal af'al, if it's mu'annas haqiqi and it's muttasil, you have to bring it as what? Mu'annas. Correct? Are you following? And وفي الجمع. If it's jama', what kind of jama'? Jam'ul mukassar. Not any jama'. في الجمع المكسر. If it's jama' mukassar, you got a choice. You can say قالت الأعراب or you can say قال نسوة. Come in the Quran, قالت الأعراب or قال نسوة في المدينة. Okay? There's a reason behind of which one you use, and that's to do with more jam'ul qilla, jam'ul kathra. Those of you have done it before. So niswa jam'ul qilla. Okay? Illa jam'i tashih. So not in jama' tashih. I mean, if it's jama' mudhakkar salim, then fakamufradayhi. It has to be at the mufrad. So for example, az-zaydun, you have to say, you can't say qamat az-zaydun. What do you have to say? Qamaz zaydun, not qamat az-zaydun. And you can't say qamal hindat. You have to say qamat al-hindat. Correct? But if you had a fasila, if you had qamat, for example, you have a fasila in between, You said قامت اليوم الهندات. What could you make قامت as well? What could you make it? قامة, because it's a fasil, it's munfasil. Correct? If you have, for example, we use التمر, we say سقط التمرات. Is that correct? Because the muannas majazi, so you can say سقط or سقطت, both of them permissible. Because what? The mufrad of the tamarat is what? The rule of the plural is the same as the rule of the singular. Is that understood? Yes? Is everybody following? So that's the G. This means illa ka jam'i tasheeh, except so in the jama', so basically in all jama'. So the reason he said all jama', so jama' includes what? Jama' includes jam'ul mukassar, and it also includes ismul jam'i. So what comes in the Quran? وَكَذَّبَتْ. What comes كَذَّبَتْ? قَوْمُ نُوحٍ. So even in ismul jam'i, a singular word with what kind of meaning? Plural meaning. A singular word with plural meaning. In here, what can you do? You can say كذب, some places, and كذبت as well. So in a jam'ul mukassar, in ismul jama', you have a choice. Except that jama' which is tasheeh. What does tasheeh mean? Salim. What we call jama' salim. In jama' salim, you don't have a choice. فَكَمُفْرَدَيْهِمَا. The jam'u tasheeh, jam'u salim, mudhakkar and mu'annath. So these two are like their mufrad. فَكَمُفْرَدَيْهِمَا. So they are like their mufrad. Whatever the rule of the mufrad is, the same rule will apply to the jama'. So az-zaydun is like zayd. Whatever rule applies to zayd will apply to qama, to apply to zaydun. Hindat, whatever rule applies to hind will apply to hindat. Whatever rule applies to tamaratun will apply to tamarat. So he's saying here that all the jama', you are allowed to do any of them, mudhakkar or mu'annas. You can do ilhaq of the alama ta'nith, or you can leave it out in jam'ul mukassar and jam'ul ismul jam'i. But you can't do that in jam'ul tasheeh. You have to bring it singular. You have to bring it what? Like the mufrad. Whatever the mufrad is, the same rule will apply to the jama' tasheeh, jama' salim, whether it's mudhakkar or whether it's mu'annath. Does that make sense? Does everybody understand that now? Okay. So inshallah we'll do some exercises on this inshallah. Okay. Subhanallah wa bihamdi subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك.